This is Sam from the Masculine Journey podcast, and our goal with the podcast is help you to try to find your way in this difficult world. Your Chosen Truth Network podcast is starting in just seconds. Enjoy it, share it, but most of all, thank you for listening and choosing the Truth Podcast Network.
This is the Truth Network. Welcome to Truth Talk Live.
All right, let's talk.
The truth is, I can't hide it, I can't hold it no more.
A daily program powered by the Truth Network.
This is kind of a great thing, and I'll tell you why.
Where pop culture, current events, and theology all come together.
Speak your mind.
And now, here's today's Truth Talk Live host.
It's a celebration of life today on Truth Talk Live, and the question of the day is, how did your spouse handle the birth pains? Again, it was a celebration of life because Tammy, for those who know, I'm Robby Dillmore, and my wife Tammy and I had our 8th grandchild actually this morning at about 10:53. Marjorie Stewart was born. And very exciting, but of course, as we are going through that with the other family, et cetera, Tammy just constantly reminded everyone of how I handled the original 3 that we had. And so as I was thinking about what an awesome topic it is, birth pains, right? As obviously the whole earth is in that. And I don't know how your spouse, I'm hoping that a lot of you experienced, childbirth with your spouse.
They were better.
But what I did notice is that everybody that told the story had some way that they related to how their spouse handled that particular situation. And so, I brought, this is the first ever time that I can remember. Maybe Tammy's been on with me once or twice before. So if you're on Facebook Live or you're on YouTube or whatever watching, I'm going to put up a picture of Marjorie here in a second so you can see that. But meanwhile, and Mariah. So I got Tammy to tell my part of the story. In other words, I don't think I could tell it with the same flavor that Tammy can tell it. and so Tammy, what was it like to have a baby with Robby Dillmore in the delivery room?
It is the worst thing ever. Because I'm laying there dying, and he's like, oh, here comes a big contraction. Oh, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Big contraction.
Yeah, and then so you haven't ever reminded me of that happened, right?
No, for 35 years I've reminded you, all 3 children.
So I know you got a story, and we would love to hear yours. Exactly what was that like? All in good fun, because the idea is birth pains. We're going to talk about what the Bible has to say about birth pains. I would love your comments on what the Bible has to say about birth pains. It is a celebration of life, and so I'm digging into the Kingdom Pursuits Prize Vault, and so today for the first 3 callers, we're going to give you, we got some special books. One of those is about mourning. I'm trying to think of the name of that. The title of that book, Nick, is
Hope in the Morning.
Hope in the Morning. There you go. We got copies of that. Good job, Tammy. So what's your recollection of birth pains? 866-348-7884, 866-343-TRUTH. Now, as you might imagine, there's another side to this story, okay? That we have Tammy's side of the story, but now we're going to hear...
But you didn't have a baby.
That's true. That's true. But for all you husbands out there, like I remember, it's a whole lot easier to be the patient than it is to be the spouse of the patient. And Tammy's experienced that a lot because, right, when I was going through cancer, do you think I had it easier laying in the bed being the patient, or you had it worse being the, right?
You had it easier.
Right. And then when I fell out of the tree?
You had it easier.
Okay. And when I had the brain abscess?
You had it easier.
Okay.
And you're lucky we're still married.
So the point of all that is, now when you're having those labor pains, right, and you're the husband, this is not an easy thing to go through. And what had happened actually is our oldest child, which is Robby, the third, our son, his umbilical cord was wrapped around his leg. And so, here you are, a young father. I guess I was 33 years old at the time. Yeah. And we go in for what we thought was a checkup, and they're listening to the heartbeat, and all of a sudden the heart stops. And they're like, oh, she's having a contraction and the heart's stopping. Oh, my goodness, his umbilical cord must be wrapped around his leg. So that began a process of them inducing her labor, and they were worried that, oh, my gosh, we're going to have to do emergency C-section and this, and this. And so every time she would begin to have a contraction, it terrified me because I thought it was going to kill the baby. But, of course...
But you could have kept that to yourself. And you should have.
I know you got a story. 866-348-7884. This has not been resolved for 36 years. And I've told her many times that when we get to heaven, Jesus is going to resolve it for us. Anyway, we've got Buxman. He is in Ohio. He has a story. I'm not surprised. Buxman, you're on Truth Talk Live.
Reporting for duty, Gilmore family. It's wonderful to hear your voice, Miss Tammy. This is awesome. I talked to your husband quite a little bit. We go way back, but it's wonderful hearing your voice, ma'am.
Thank you.
So
here's my story. Here's my story, Robby. Wow, and I just heard yours. This is frightening. I guess the Lord wants to test us fathers, because I had a similar situation with our firstborn, Luke. Amber, finally, Luke was out, but all of a sudden, our doctor, our OB goes, we need a nurse in here right now. And my heart dropped, Gilmore's Truth Talk Live.
Oh, yeah.
And my little boy just turned really, really purple. And come to find out, he was not crying. Come to find out, guys, he had something lodged in his little tiny throat. Mm-hmm. And I freaked out, Miss Tammy. And obviously Amber was, mom. She didn't know what was going on. But they called the nurse in. They cleaned out my little boy's throat. And he started crying. And, oh, my gosh, Dad started crying.
I'm sure.
So that's what happened with our firstborn. Yeah, Stillmores. But our second, my daughter, it was great, no problems. They both had great weight, and so I was a mess. Gilmore family, Truck Live. It was just very frightening. But praise God, they're both doing really well.
Speaking of being a mess, actually, Buxman, that today I was a mess because my daughter chose to name her child, right, that was born today, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, by the way, proud grandfather. She chose to name it after my mother, and it just so happens that Mariah is almost a spitting image of my mother. My mother passed away in 2016, which was her first grandparent to pass away. And so she named the child Marjorie Ruth, which my mother's name was Marjorie Ann, but just to get the Marjorie. So I'm standing there holding this baby, seeing my mother. I'm crying just thinking about it.
God is amazing, Robby. God is so good, brother.
He is. We gotta go. We gotta go to a break, though. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today, what was your birthing experience as a spouse, or maybe you're the one in labor and you remember your husband did something
horrible?
866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. The call in and share your story. We got Buxman still in Ohio. You're still with us?
I am still here, Gilmore.
And so you had 2 children?
I did. And watch this, you guys. My son will be 18 years old in September. My daughter just turned 16 in April. So it just feels like just a week ago is when that happened, Robby and Tammy.
So I'm just curious, so if your wife were in this conversation, she'll go, oh, I never forget. What is it that you've heard about for 18 years?
Right?
Yeah, what was that?
I would say probably how they've turned into young men and women.
Oh,
I'm really amazed with my son. I mean,
she wouldn't remind you of how you went out and got a cheeseburger and you were
Oh, no. And now, if you're talking about the actual birthdays, guys,
Yeah.
I do remember when my son was born, our doctor, he was funny. He was a cowboy. He would wear cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. And he wore cowboy boots and a cowboy hat in the delivery room, Truth Talk Live. I am not kidding you. We heard this clunk, 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 clunk on the way down as he was coming in to deliver my son, our son. Anyway, I remember him saying, do you want to cut the cord? And I'm a man's man, you guys. I said, I'll cut it with my teeth.
Oh, wow.
and he just laughed, you guys, because that's just the kind of guy he was. He was kind of a true grit kind of guy. I loved him. His name was Dr. Banis. I'll never forget it, Dr. Banis. I don't think he's in practice anymore, but he was John Wayne.
Oh,
and
apparently.
I said, I'll cut it with my teeth. And he just laughed and let me snip it with the little scissors.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. It was
That's
absolutely awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you as always, my friend. I so appreciate your stories, and you're joining us today. So I'm always glad to contribute to Truth Talk Live. And once again, it's very nice meeting you, Miss Tammy.
You too.
Thank you, Buxman. God bless.
Bye-bye.
So, what's your story? 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. And I don't know if you've ever made the connection between birth pains, how they come in waves, right? And they come in waves in order to, get that thinning process so that the baby can come, so that new life would come into the equation. And I don't know if your life's like mine, but, a lot of things, as we talked about earlier, as Tammy talked about, when I had cancer, when I got crushed between the Jeep, all that came in waves because there was a certain thinning of, my life that needed to happen before, the real Robby could begin to step forth. And so a lot of our suffering, interestingly, has to do with our own, rebirth experience, or as we're going through our sanctification process. So I don't want to be remiss because we need your story. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. It's so much fun to talk about these and to hear them. 866-348-7884, because as we were talking about, other family are with, they had some stories, and I know that you've got one to share. And so, Tammy, since I have you right here, what else do you remember about how wonderful I was, during this process?
You were horrible. The entire time.
Other than mentioning what else got to you?
Oh, you're having a really big contraction. It's going to hurt.
That's you've pointed that out. You don't remember anything else that's coming to mind, but we would love, again, to your story as you think about that, the suffering, and when in James it says, consider it pure joy when you face all these birth pains of all sorts of different kinds, because really think about it, I clearly wouldn't be on the radio today and so many other things had I not experienced those birth pains and gone through some of the things that I had an opportunity to go through. And so, when you see that come as waves, well, as I was studying the idea of Peter walking on the water, I clearly got the idea of these waves that were hitting him that caused him to doubt. But if he hadn't doubted, then he never would have gone below the waves, and Jesus would have never reached down and caught him. And so as a result of, the birth pains that have hit me, the waves that have hit me, that has caused my faith to waver or whatever, that's where Jesus picks you up and it begins to build that new life. But Nick himself, my very producer, you've got a little story yourself, right, Nick?
Yeah, I do. So this is something that my mom, she's told me for 26 years of my life, for 26 years. So, I was born on November 26th, and my mom, she went through 22 hours of labor and contractions, and she tells me this, like, on my birthday every year. She tells me how I was almost a C-section baby, and, and she told me that my shoulder or my collarbone, it got caught on her pelvis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, it got caught on her pelvis, but they took me into the INCU.
Right. I see.
Yeah, for the babies, right? And so what she told me was that once they took me in there and I heard the knives and, they're about to cut, I was like, I'm going to go the right way.
Here.
I'm going to go the right way. And so she always reminds me that on my birthday. So that's something that I always remember.
It's coming this November, the 26th.
Yeah.
It'll be back. And so we need your story. I know you got one. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. Or maybe, you've thought about the waves before and how things come in waves in order to create enough stretching of your faith in order to, get to the next level, whatever that may feel like. Again, I would love to hear yours or your spouse's or whatever it is that comes to mind as you think about this process. 866, the number to call in, 866-348-7884 is, again, we talked about, we got 3 of these books that we're going to give away, Hope in the Morning, and we've already given away 1, so we have 2 more to go. But in order for that to happen, we got 1 caller calling in, but we need your call, 866-348-7884. And, as I was looking at this idea of waves, I began to look at that in Hebrew. And so we're going to get to that in a second. But we got Ed in Roanoke. And so, Ed, you're on Truth Talk Live. Share us what you got going on there.
Hey, Robby, how you doing today?
I am having fun. I just had my next grandbaby, so I'm really having fun.
Well, you're really going to have fun when you hear my story.
Oh, good. I love that.
Because I was a young, naive, stupid, if I could say.
I resemble that remark.
My wife, both her births were C-sections, and so we were in the hospital. I was doing some research, pre-birth research.
Ed, we got to go to a break, so we got to hear about this because we're dying to. Can you hold on for a minute for us?
Sure thing.
It's actually going to be probably about 4 minutes, but when we come back, we're going to hear Ed. We're also going to hear more on this whole idea of what this looks like in Hebrew. So stay tuned. A lot more Truth Talk Live coming.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today, how did your spouse handle those birth pains? That's the question. I would love to hear your story. I would. So don't feel all alone out there. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. We got Ed in Roanoke. He was fixing to share his experience with his wife. As it sounded like she had 2 C-sections, right, Ed?
Yeah. And both were a little comical, I think. The first one, she was getting ready to go into labor, and then the doctor says, we need to get her into the hospital in surgery because we're gonna have to perform a C-section. Mm. So I had been doing some research. You had the circ and anti-circ people, and and I was just wondering, okay, if this is going to be done. My first question to the doctor is, Doc, are you performing the circumcision? And then my very next question was, do you have much experience in this? Are you good at it? And the doctor looks at me and he says, young man, your wife is getting ready to go into major surgery. I think you should consider other things at the moment. And then the baby's born, of course, and I'm behind the curtain. I'm not cutting anything. I'm not cutting no umbilical cord.
Right.
But so we got some friends there with us, and they're greeting us, and we're out there with the baby, and and the next experience, the nurse comes out, and we called her Attila the Hun because she says, well, whenever the paparazzi gets done with taking pictures, I'll get the baby in there to clean it up.
Oh.
And we were like, oh, my goodness, this is what?
The paparazzi.
Oh, gosh.
She was just not friendly. And then my second boy, he was born on the mission field.
Wow.
And the hospital we had probably the number one doctor in the country of Thailand because he was on TV and he would teach other doctors and vitro and all this other stuff. Well, we had probably the number one doctor in Thailand performing the operation, of course, another C-section. And my wife was a photographer. So we're sitting in there, and the two doctors operating, and the one doctor, I mean, they're speaking Thai, of course, but they're having a conversation back and forth. The one doctor says, "Hey, I'm getting ready to take a trip to Japan. What camera do you suggest I take?" My wife is just, "What model should I buy?" And my wife's just sitting there ready to laugh, And then that baby's born, and my first comment when he came out was, "Oh, we just gave birth to Bigfoot," because he was hairy. He had hair up and down his back. I was like, "That's unbelievable. He's really hairy."
Your wife probably remembered that, didn't she?
Oh, yeah, we had a great time.
And so what was that child's name?
The first one was Josiah, and the second one was Micah Jasper.
Oh, pretty.
And so did Micah remain hairy, or did he?
No, he did not at all. He's a 16-year-old, 106-pound skinny thing.
Yeah, you could have thrown a little Esau name in on him, since he was. So you could give him that story. Well, Ed, I love it. That's so wonderful. I appreciate you sharing those. I will forever remember all, especially the Bigfoot part. So, thank you, my friend. You have a great weekend. Oh, it was so awesome. God bless you. You're right. I did love them. Thank you. So what's your story? I know you got one in there, and that, or maybe what would your spouse say if you're one of those husbands out there like me? If we had her on the phone, what might she say? Like Tammy is recalling other things that she really enjoyed about how, I had gone to these Lamaze classes, so I thought I was being hauled at, I'd learned, me, I'm a good student, I think, and I was trying to learn all these wonderful techniques. And so, Tammy, what else did you really enjoy about how I learned all that stuff in Lamaze class?
You kept rubbing my leg, and it was driving me crazy. And I'm like, "Don't touch me." But you kept on, but you finally stopped.
So, I just have to relate this because, it wasn't but a few hours ago our daughter Mariah was experiencing sort of what I would call Tammy pains. And her mother went to kiss her on the head. What happened, Tammy?
Oh, I went to kiss her on the head. She said, "You're really making me mad."
Her favorite word is annoying.
Annoying. You're so annoying. You're so annoying.
And I could relate, back to many times where, this is just part of the deal. So I know if you're a husband out there, you probably got some recollection of this. 866-348-7884 is the number to call in and share. We would love to hear it, because here's another part of what's going on, right? That you are this, how my daughter was, she was actually in labor, Nick, for 44 hours. So believe me, yesterday afternoon when the kissing on the forehead incident took place, she'd had about all of, but interestingly, when we saw her this morning at 10:53 with that baby in her arms, which I've showed many pictures of on Facebook, with people that were looking, she couldn't be more, I've never seen a bigger smile on her face. And even at her wedding, I don't know that she's ever been happier than the look on her face holding that baby.
But I did not have the nerve to kiss her on her forehead.
But another little cool aspect of this, while you're getting up the courage to call in at 866-34-TRUTH, and by the way, I haven't got to the Hebrew part of waves yet. Oh, somebody did get the nerve. Is that, oh man, I can't believe I forgot what I was going to say. As we were waiting, man, it'll come back to me. So we'll get to the Hebrew part of what's going on there.
Okay.
All right. So if you know me well, I love to look at words. And so I looked at the word waves in Hebrew, and it related to the word break, because the idea of breakers. But I always thought of breakers as the water's breaking over the top, of the wave. But actually the word break, as far as the Hebrew of that, is the same word that when they would break up their idols. In other words, when they broke up an Asherah pole, or when they broke up a Baal statue or whatever, that is the word that they would use that later became the root of the word waves. And so when you think about it, whether it's, yourself that is getting broken up or what it may be, then obviously that's kind of what happens with us as we get to be totally in Christ. So we got Mike and his wife, Tammy. Oh, I can hardly wait. I did not know Mike. And his in Dayton, Ohio. So Mike and Tammy, you're on Truth Talk Live. I love your name, Tammy.
Yeah, she's not going to talk. She tells me I'm a nutcase because we're calling in all the time, but I'm trying to get her to speak. Say hi, Tammy.
Hello.
Hi, Tammy. Tammy, meet Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
She's not going to do it.
Well, you think it was easy to get my wife, Tammy, to... I'm telling you, but she finally... Because she's still so mad about the whole thing that it's all coming back to her. So, Tammy, we want to hear from you. Like, what did... We've been know about Mike, but we want to know what Mike did while you were going through this very difficult, trying time.
Well...
On the first one?
On the first one. Let Tammy go, yeah.
Yeah.
He was very young, so he was telling me that don't be mad at me when you give birth. he was telling, he didn't want me to be mad at him or get upset with him because I was going through pain, and so he didn't want me to get upset.
I don't remember that, but that's funny. But I remember when the baby was born that it came out, and she had a very long labor, and it was very long. And Michael came out, and he had a cone head, and I kept rubbing his head and keeping and putting that little bonnet on his head, and she made fun of me forever about that. It was.
Yeah, but I didn't know you had a cone head.
Yeah, but I did. It was big. It was like an ice cream cone, And I kept rubbing it down, and the nurse kept telling me, it's going to go away. It's going to be fine, And now we have grandkids, and we are. I never thought I would be a grandfather. I just didn't think it was going to be, I'm going to be so excited. And when I had grandkids, I am so excited and I'm so joyful to be around them. It's so, and so is my wife. We love to watch them, and love to be and share God with them. It's just awesome.
And so one of the secrets of grandkids is, I got to know this, Tammy, what do your grandkids call you?
Well, they don't really speak that good yet, so I want them to call me Nana.
Nana?
She wants them,
Nana, yeah.
She wants them to call her Nana, yeah.
And so what are you hoping for, Mike?
I just want them to call me Grandpa. I don't want nothing fancy. If that was your question.
That was my question, and I too. I was totally good with Grandpa, but what I ended up with, Pops.
Oh, what?
Pops. My oldest grandchild, Lila. She calls me, "Oh, Pops." However that all works. You guys hang on for us. And you got some other folks out there that need to call in. 866-348-7884. What was your birthing story? Call us. We'll be right back.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. What a special show we have today for you. We're talking about what was your birthing story, and you may not, in fact, I can only remember maybe a handful of times, maybe 2 times since I've been on the air for some 18 years that Tammy actually joined me. So not only do I have my wife Tammy with me, we have Mike and his wife Tammy with us. And so, guys, as you're listening, Tammy, and as my Tammy here is listening, when you think about it, and I saw this today in such a miraculous way that my daughter Mariah and her husband Dee, they came into the hospital on Tuesday as, sort of a newly married couple. But when they leave the hospital tomorrow or whenever they get out with their new baby, they are a family, and we saw that family, right, in a very beautiful way as we were leaving the hospital this afternoon. And now you guys have seen that with yours. And so, I'm as you guys have had grandkids, like just the miracle of, like, if you think about it, Mike, when you left with that first baby, that you guys, it was just started out the two of you, and the next thing you know, it was the three of you. Now you got however many, and Tammy and I have 8 grandchildren plus 3 extra in-laws, bonus kids. and
Wow.
when we took this picture, both our daughters got married this year, and so Mariah got married last June 17th, and so she had this baby today. It was pretty awesome that God worked quickly in that particular situation. But when I looked at those pictures, like, oh my goodness, it just started out me and Tammy, but now look what God's done. I mean, we stand there and this whole tribe, it's like amazing. So in all that, we know that Mike did something right.
I married the right girl.
There you go. Me too.
So did you, Robby.
And we know that Robby it could have happened that Robby did something right. So I want you to think hard, Tammy's, and feel free to either one of you go. Was there anything that during this labor and birthing process that you feel like your husband did right? That he would tell other husbands, like, take a lesson from Mike. This is what he may have had his issues, but he did this right. I'm challenging my wife here to find.
I mean, the second time he was there, and he was good, and he helped me. So, I mean, at least he was there to help me.
He cared too, right? He cared deeply.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's something to be said for that, and
yeah,
a lot of it, and hey, it was a process that. I never want to forget it, in spite of whatever happened. So, Tammy, you've heard. Yes. What do you think? I'm asking my Tammy now.
What is well, when they put the baby in my arms for the first time, I'm saying, oh my gosh, look at all this responsibility I have, and raising him, getting to know God, that was in my thoughts. And my gosh, what a responsibility that we have. And it wasn't easy over the years. Now my son's 30 years old and 32, and my wife's correcting me. They have 2 stepdaughters.
Believe me, I've been corrected 5 times during the break. But you know what they say, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, we don't want to stop Tammy. She could be on a roll. She's trying to find something I did. Was there anything I did?
I think you might have got a washcloth wet for me and put on my forehead.
There you go.
And then you said, here comes another contraction.
It's going to be a big one.
Yeah, he rubbed my back.
I rubbed her back.
Oh, way to go, Mike. Yeah, tell Tammy, now you got,
rub my back.
now I'm getting the dirty look.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did something like.
All right, you want in on the fun, you got to call us 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. Tammy, I'm talking about Mike's Tammy right this second, but I'm actually very proud of both Tammys, right? Because it's not easy to get on the radio, and it's nerve-wracking. But I'm so grateful because, as people are listening, I know everyone's relating, right? That it's just, especially that first child, you didn't have any idea what that was going to be like. It's one thing to go to a Lamaze class where you sit there for an hour and find out about it. It's another thing to sit there in the throes of that monitor going boop, 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 and here comes a traction, all that stuff. And I'm watching that number go 10, 15, 20. And even when my daughter was in there just a few hours ago, guess what I was tempted to say?
But I hit him on the leg and I said, don't do it.
Oh my God. It's the hardest thing that any women would go through.
Yes.
866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. Come on, you got it, and you got just a minute to get it in here. But when you really think about it, like the miracle of what's going to happen to all of us, right? As those waves continue to hit us, and the pains that's going through that, and I even think raising kids is one of those things that comes in waves of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Ask the prodigal father. You know, he understood all that. And this coming up a Father's Day, obviously on Sunday, that I can assure you, whether you're mother or father, you have felt like their original birth pains. I did not have any. I've had kidney stones. I've had other pain, but I can tell you the emotional pain of watching your children suffer through things is really, really, really difficult. You know, whether they've suffered through, you know, some kind of addiction or some kind of a divorce or whatever it is that they have had to suffer through. Believe me, you know, as a parent, now just think of all that suffering. And I often think that as Jesus hung there on the cross, and I bet you guys would agree with me, that man, he was facing all of that for all of us.
Yeah.
And talk about big kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I am a big kid, whatever. I mean, you know, he has seen not only the suffering that you had, but think how we made our parents suffer, right? Your mom, Mike, I can't imagine, how big a baby were you?
I don't know. I think I think it was 8 when my
just think,
well,
man.
I had 8-pound babies.
Tammy had 8-pound babies.
8, 9.
That's why they had cone head.
6.5.
And Tammy, how big was Mariah? She was 8.
Mariah was 8, 9.5.
Yeah, see, my son was 8, 9. That's hard. That's was
painful.
Hard one.
Was he the conehead?
Yeah. I had it naturally, and then I was really, put it this way, I had lots of stitches afterwards.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a challenge. It is. There's no doubt about it. Those big babies, and there's women that have 10-pound babies, maybe 11. I just
I could not.
But,
I could not either.
But we all put our parents, whatever, you know, through, you know, we obviously put our mother, and then, you know, let's not leave out the dads, because anybody that thinks dads don't suffer is not spent 40 hours in a labor delivery.
Hey, Robby, my daughter had 2 C-sections, and the first C-section, you know, it went pretty well. And well, not really. And then she had the second C-section. And if she didn't have the second C-section, they wouldn't have fixed some of the things that went wrong on the first C-section. So they repaired some inner things with my daughter. And, you know, that was a I mean, we you know, me and my wife were praying for my daughter. And we have 2 great, beautiful sons, and from my daughter. And it's, you know, if she didn't have a second C-section, she probably would have, you know, it would have been pretty awful. And
we had to, because she had the first one.
Yeah, but thank God that, you know, she had the second C-section, and the doctors took care of everything, you know, and in her gut and all that stuff. And that's a miracle,
you know. And when you bring up an amazing thing that we get to pray, like I was thinking about that all night. You know, I knew that, you know, Mariah was really going through it, and we get a chance to pray for our kids. As we know, I knew she was suffering, but I also knew my daughter's heart to know that when she held that baby, you know, that she was going to be in heaven. And I can honestly say, as I imagine you were, Tammy, and again, your children as they had their kids, I mean, to actually have that is just like one of the most amazing things to take in the process, because what God is doing, obviously, is he's making more and more people to have fellowship with him for eternity. Yes, Tammy.
One thing I wanted to say, yesterday Mariah said, "I'm never having any more children. This is it." And then today she's holding her baby and she goes, "Oh, it wasn't too bad. I'm going to have more kids."
That's because they make it where you don't remember.
Exactly.
Isn't it a miracle that God worked that out? Like, that somehow or another, all that's forgotten, and because it's so worthwhile to have that baby and hold that precious one. And, you know, I looked at Dee, her husband, and I remember how terrified I was. Like, Don't drop it. Don't. What happened?
Yeah, and he's telling me, use 2 hands. I'm like, I know how to hold a baby.
Well, we're almost out of time.
That's okay. You guys have been a delight, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate Tammy, you having the courage to do this, and my Tammy having the courage to do. Really, really fun, guys. And as you're out there thinking about your story, man, just, God said be fruitful and multiply in so many ways. Thanks for listening.
Another program powered by the Truth Network.